You might think you know the law, but wait until you hear about the one banning donkeys in bathtubs. Across the United States, legal codes are filled with animal statutes so strange they defy all common sense. We are about to journey through 33 of the most bizarre and unbelievable animal laws that are still officially on the books today. By the end, you will possess a collection of jaw-dropping legal curiosities that will make you question everything you thought you knew about American justice. How did a state with no ocean come to ban whaling, and why is it illegal to wrestle a bear in one southern state? What is the weirdest animal law you have ever encountered in your own town? Arizona law specifically forbids placing a donkey in a bathtub. The exact wording of the statute leaves little room for interpretation, making the act a clear legal violation. To understand how such a specific prohibition came to be, we must travel back in time to the early 20th century. In many Arizona towns, donkeys were essential for transportation and labor, a common sight on dusty streets. Indoor plumbing, however, was a relatively new and sometimes precarious luxury. The law likely emerged from a very practical place, a growing concern over public sanitation and nuisance complaints. Imagine the chaos of a frightened or stubborn donkey inside a small porcelain tub, the potential for flooding, property damage, and general mayhem. Lawmakers probably saw this not as a joke, but as a genuine problem to be solved. Today, of course, the image is utterly absurd. How many people even own a donkey, let alone consider giving it a bath indoors? The law stands as a fossil, a perfectly preserved snapshot of a problem that has long since vanished, leaving behind a bewildering legal relic for modern residents. From the dusty bathtubs of Arizona, we travel north to the damp, misty forests of Washington state, where the law takes a truly unexpected turn. Believe it or not, the state of Washington has officially extended legal protection to a creature whose very existence remains unproven. Sasquatch, also known as Bigfoot, is classified as a protected species. This means that harming, harassing, or even killing the legendary ape man is a punishable offense. The roots of this law are tangled not in science, but in the rich cultural fabric of the Pacific Northwest. For generations, the region has been a hotspot for tales of a giant, hairy hominid roaming its vast, unexplored wilderness. This deep-seated folklore, fueled by countless eyewitness accounts and a thriving community of cryptid enthusiasts, created a unique public sentiment. Lawmakers, perhaps with a mix of humor and genuine local pride, decided to get ahead of a hypothetical crisis. What would happen if a hunter actually did shoot a Sasquatch? The legal and ethical chaos would be unimaginable. By preemptively granting it protection, the state effectively outlawed the creature's mistreatment, ensuring that if Bigfoot is ever found, it will be treated with the dignity and care afforded to any endangered animal. It is a fascinating legal paradox, a set of rules created for a defendant that may never appear in court. This law forces us to ask a profound question. How far should our legal system go to protect the unknown? And what does it say about us that we are willing to legislate our most enduring mysteries? Alabama has drawn a very clear line in the sand, or perhaps in the wrestling ring, by making it illegal to fight a bear. This is not a law about self-defense against a wild animal. It specifically targets the organized spectacle of bear wrestling, a practice where humans would voluntarily enter a penned area to grapple with a captive bear for public entertainment. To understand why such a specific law was necessary, we must look back at a darker chapter of Southern entertainment history. For decades, traveling shows and rough and tumble bars would feature these brutal matches. A bear, often declawed and with its teeth filed down to reduce its lethality, would be pitted against a man. The goal was not to kill the animal, but to pin it or simply survive the encounter for a set amount of time, all while a crowd cheered and bet on the outcome. It was a spectacle of dominance and cruelty, masquerading as sport. The animals involved lived lives of constant stress and fear, while the human participants risked severe injury or death from an animal that, even in its weakened state, possessed immense power. While high-profile enforcement cases are rare, the law serves as a powerful deterrent. It acknowledges a simple, profound truth that earlier generations chose to ignore. There is no honor in forcing a majestic wild creature into a cage for a fight it never asked for. This legal stance forces us to reflect on our own entertainment. What does it say about a society that once found amusement in the forced combat of man and beast? And what does our decision to outlaw it say about the progress we have made? Moving from the southern wrestling rings to the concrete canyons of New York City, we find a law that tackles a very different kind of animal encounter. The New York City Health Code makes it unequivocally illegal to keep an alligator as a pet. This is not some obscure statute buried in a forgotten ledger. It is a direct response to the very real and alarming challenges of exotic pet ownership in one of the world's most densely populated urban spaces. The public safety rationale here is immediate and stark. An adult alligator is a powerful predator capable of inflicting catastrophic injury. Imagine the sheer impossibility of containing such an animal in a standard city apartment. The risk of escape of a pet gator wandering into a hallway or, in a worst-case scenario, finding its way into the complex plumbing of the city is a municipal nightmare. This law is inextricably linked to one of the city's most enduring urban legends, the myth of the sewer alligators. For generations, stories have circulated about baby pet alligators, flushed down toilets by owners who could no longer handle them, surviving and growing to monstrous sizes in the dark, warm tunnels beneath the streets. While these tales are largely unproven, they are rooted in a kernel of truth. Throughout the 20th century, there were indeed documented cases of alligators being pulled from the city's sewer systems, likely the result of irresponsible pet disposal. The law against owning them is a pragmatic attempt to prevent these very scenarios, to stop a problem before it can literally fester underground. It forces us to confront a simple question. Why would anyone believe a wild predator could ever be happy or safe, confined to a tiny urban living space? This statute is a clear declaration that the whims of exotic pet owners cannot override the collective safety and sanity of 8 million people. While New York City worries about gators in the sewers, the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, has declared a different kind of nuisance a crime. It is illegal to let your dog howl excessively. This is not a blanket ban on a dog making noise. The law specifically targets prolonged, unreasonable howling that disturbs the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. But what exactly does excessive mean in this context? The ordinance does not define it with a stopwatch or a decibel meter. Instead, it relies on a subjective standard, the reasonable person. Would a reasonable person trying to enjoy their own home be seriously disturbed by the sound? This vagueness is the law's greatest weakness and its most fascinating feature. Imagine a lonely hound baying at a full moon for an hour, a clear violation. But what about a dog that howls for 5 minutes when an ambulance siren passes? The line is blurry, left to the interpretation of the complaining neighbor and the responding police officer. The enforcement process typically begins with a complaint. A resident files a report with animal control or the local police, who then must investigate. They have to witness the howling or gather enough evidence from multiple neighbors to confirm it rises to the level of a public nuisance. If they do, the owner can receive a citation and a fine, which can escalate with repeated offenses. The true challenge lies in proving intent. The law hinges on the owner knowingly permitting the behavior. An owner at work all day might have no idea their pet is serenading the entire block, creating a legal defense that is difficult to overcome. This law forces us to weigh two fundamental rights against each other, the right to peace and quiet versus the right to own a pet. It asks a difficult question: where does a dog's natural behavior end and an owner's negligence begin? Atlanta, Georgia adds a new layer of absurdity with a law that explicitly forbids tying a giraffe to a telephone pole. The mental image is almost comical: a creature of the savannah tethered to a piece of urban infrastructure. What specific incident could have possibly inspired such a bizarrely targeted piece of legislation? The most plausible theory points to the promotional antics of a bygone era. Decades ago, when circuses and traveling zoos were major attractions, their promoters would go to incredible lengths to drum up business. Imagine a circus rolling into town and, as a publicity stunt, parading one of its most majestic animals down Peachtree Street. Tying a giraffe to a telephone pole outside the ticket office would have been a guaranteed way to stop traffic and create a spectacle. But a panicked giraffe, an animal not built for crowded city streets, could easily lash out with its powerful neck and legs, kick a car, or cause a massive pileup. This law is not just about the giraffe's well-being, though that is certainly a factor. It is a public safety regulation born from a very real and likely very expensive hypothetical. This statute is actually a small part of a much broader legal framework that governs the tethering of exotic animals in public spaces. Most cities have general ordinances against creating a public nuisance or allowing an animal to run at large. But a general nuisance law might not adequately cover the unique dangers posed by an escaped tiger or a startled elephant. By naming the giraffe specifically, Atlanta lawmakers closed a potential loophole, ensuring that no one could argue that a giraffe was not a foreseeable risk under a generic statute. This forces us to wonder about the chain of events that leads to such precise legal language. Does every strangely specific law exist because someone, somewhere, actually tried to do the very thing it now forbids? Iowa offers a surprising path to legal skunk ownership, but it is paved with paperwork and a single, crucial condition. You can legally keep a skunk as a pet, but only if you secure a permit from the state's Department of Natural Resources and only if the animal has been surgically descented. This is not a simple pet registration. The permit process involves an application that scrutinizes your ability to properly house and care for a wild animal, ensuring you understand its specific dietary and environmental needs. The state wants to be absolutely certain you are not just someone who thought a baby skunk looked cute, only to abandon it when the realities of its care set in. The mandatory dissenting procedure is the cornerstone of this entire legal framework. It is a surgical operation performed by a veterinarian that removes the skunk's scent glands, rendering it incapable of spraying that infamous tenacious musk. This single requirement transforms the skunk from a walking public nuisance into a potentially manageable household pet. Why go to such lengths for one specific animal? The reasons are deeply practical. An unchecked population of pet skunks could easily lead to escaped animals establishing feral colonies, disrupting local ecosystems. Furthermore, skunks are a primary rabies vector species, meaning they are one of the animals most likely to carry and transmit the deadly virus. By controlling ownership through permits and requiring dissenting, the state effectively minimizes public health risks and prevents well-intentioned but misguided pet owners from creating a much larger problem. This law presents a fascinating compromise between personal freedom and public welfare. It acknowledges that people might want unusual pets, but it draws a firm line at the point where that desire could impact the health and safety of the entire community. How many other seemingly ordinary pets, if left completely unregulated, could pose a similar hidden threat? Alaska draws a firm line for every tourist hoping for a viral moment, making it a crime to intentionally wake a sleeping bear for a photograph. This is not a gentle suggestion. It is a direct legal response to a growing and dangerous trend fueled by social media. Each year, Alaska sees thousands of encounters between people and its massive brown and black bear populations. While most end without incident, a significant number of attacks and close calls are directly linked to people deliberately approaching bears to get too close for a picture. Waking a sleeping bear is perhaps the most reckless act in this category. A startled bear is a terrified and defensive bear, and its first instinct will be to charge the perceived threat. An adult grizzly can cover 50 yards in under 3 seconds, leaving a person with no time to react. The law exists to short-circuit this deadly sequence before it can even begin. Rangers tell stories of visitors who, upon spotting a bear napping in the distance, have been tempted to throw rocks or shout, just to make the animal lift its head for a more dramatic photo. One infamous incident involved a man who crept within 20 feet of a slumbering brown bear, only to drop his phone, which then skittered directly toward the animal. The sound and movement jolted the bear awake, leading to a frantic, luckily non-fatal scramble for safety. This statute forces a simple but vital question. Is any photograph, no matter how spectacular, worth risking your life and causing immense stress to a wild animal simply trying to rest in its own home? It is a stark reminder that our desire for a perfect memory must never override the basic rules of the wild. That gentle morning crow of a rooster might sound charming in the countryside, but in a densely packed city, it is a 5 a.m. alarm clock that cannot be turned off. This is why countless American municipalities have drawn a firm legal line, explicitly banning roosters within city limits. The law makes a crucial distinction, one that often surprises people new to urban farming. You can usually keep a small flock of quiet, egg-laying hens in your backyard. The rooster, however, is almost always persona non grata. The reason boils down to a single, unavoidable biological fact: the crow. A rooster does not just crow at sunrise, he crows all day long at any perceived threat to assert dominance or for no apparent reason at all. This relentless, piercing sound carries for great distances, easily penetrating the thin walls of neighboring homes and shattering the early morning peace for entire blocks. The conflict this creates is a modern clash of lifestyles. On one side are the advocates of urban homesteading, who value self-sufficiency, fresh eggs, and a connection to their food source. On the other are residents who simply want to sleep in on a Saturday or enjoy a quiet cup of coffee on their patio without being serenaded by a territorial bird. City councils are often flooded with noise complaints, leading to tense neighborhood disputes where one person's sustainable hobby becomes another's daily torment. These ordinances are not about hating farm animals. They are a practical, if imperfect, solution to a fundamental problem of urban life. How do we balance the desire for a more rustic, self-reliant existence with the basic right to peace and quiet in a shared community? The rooster, through no fault of its own, has become the feathered symbol of this very 21st century dilemma. Texas takes the principle of honesty in business and applies it directly to the barnyard with a law that is both specific and sensible. It is illegal to sell a blind horse without explicitly informing the buyer of its condition. This is not a modern consumer protection statute. Its origins are buried deep in the state's agrarian past, a time when a horse was not a luxury but a fundamental necessity for work and transportation. To sell a blind horse to a farmer or a rancher without disclosure was not merely a shady deal, it was an act of economic sabotage. Imagine a settler relying on that horse to pull a plow through a rocky field, or a family trusting it to pull their wagon across uneven terrain. A blind animal in such roles was not just useless, it was an active danger capable of bolting at unseen threats or stumbling into hazards, risking its own life and the lives of those depending on it. The law forced sellers to confront a basic moral question. Was a quick, dishonest profit worth potentially ruining another family's livelihood or causing a serious accident? By mandating transparency, the statute protected both the unwary buyer from financial loss and the vulnerable animal from being placed in situations it could not possibly handle. This legal requirement to speak up about a disability reflects a profound historical understanding of the horse's role. It was a living engine, a financial asset, and a companion all in one. Its well-being and capabilities were directly tied to human survival and prosperity. This law, still on the books today, serves as a quiet monument to that bygone interdependence, a rule that valued fairness and safety over cunning and deceit. Baltimore has a statute ready for a scenario most of us would never anticipate, making it illegal to bring a lion to the movies. Think about the sheer pandemonium in a darkened theater if the previews were interrupted by a predator's roar. The flickering images on screen could easily startle the animal, triggering its instincts in a space packed with people. Escaping a cramped row of seats would be nearly impossible, turning a quiet evening at the cinema into a scene of absolute terror. This law is not an isolated piece of whimsy. It is a specific example of a much broader and entirely sensible legal principle that governs public spaces everywhere. Health codes and public safety regulations almost universally prohibit bringing non-service animals into restaurants, grocery stores, and other establishments. The reasons are clear: preventing disruptions, ensuring sanitation, and most importantly, protecting people from potential harm. A dog might be well behaved, but a lion is a fundamentally wild creature, no matter how it has been raised. This Baltimore law simply takes that universal common sense to its logical, if extreme, conclusion. It forces us to consider where we draw the line between our personal freedoms and our collective security. Why should the right of one person to have an exotic companion override the right of dozens to enjoy a public space without fear? This statute stands as a monument to practical thinking, a rule designed for a problem that hopefully never occurs, but one that would be catastrophically messy if it ever did. Oklahoma's legal code holds a spectacular contradiction, a formal ban on the act of whaling. This presents an immediate and baffling question for a state whose largest body of water is a lake and whose coastline is precisely 0 miles long. How did a prohibition on hunting ocean leviathans find a home in the heart of the American plains? The answer is likely less about practicality and more about legislative symbolism. This law probably originated not as a response to rogue whaling ships on the Great Salt Plains, but as a statement of principle. By officially outlawing whaling, Oklahoma lawmakers could align their state with a growing national and global movement toward the conservation of endangered species. It was a way to take a stand on an important environmental issue, even if that issue was geographically distant. The statute serves as a powerful, if awkward, declaration that certain ethical standards transcend local geography. This phenomenon is not unique to Oklahoma. Other landlocked states like Kentucky and Tennessee have similar, seemingly misplaced laws on their books. These statutes force us to consider the purpose of law itself. Is it only to govern what is probable, or can it also serve to articulate a society's highest ideals, even for threats that will never realistically appear? The whaling ban in Oklahoma is a law that prepares for a problem that will never come, a rule against an impossibility that nonetheless speaks volumes about what its people value. The legal landscape takes a sudden turn from the barnyard to the bedroom in Texas, where a law places a strict numerical limit on personal pleasure devices. This statute, which often appears on lists of bizarre American laws, makes it illegal for an individual to own 6 or more obscene devices, a category that has been legally interpreted to include items like dildos. The law's wording is not a simple ban, but a restriction on quantity, drawing a firm line at half a dozen. For decades, this rule was more than just a legal curiosity. It was actively enforced, with police even conducting raids on adult novelty stores to confiscate inventory and arrest shop owners. The rationale behind the law was rooted in a specific moral perspective, the belief that such items had no purpose other than to appeal to what some might crudely term base or animalistic instincts, and that their proliferation was a detriment to public morality. This connection, while humorous on its surface, highlights a serious legal and philosophical debate about the limits of government regulation over private, consensual behavior. The law faced numerous legal challenges, eventually making its way to a federal appeals court. The court struck down the statute, ruling that it violated the constitutional right to privacy under the 14th Amendment. The judges found that the state of Texas had no legitimate interest in dictating what consenting adults could do in the privacy of their own homes, effectively ending the enforcement of this numerical cap. Yet, the law itself was never formally repealed by the state legislature, leaving it as a dormant, unenforceable relic on the books. It stands as a monument to a time when the law attempted to quantify and control intimacy, a bizarre echo of a past moral panic that now feels utterly alien. How many other unenforceable laws still linger, waiting for a court to finally render them obsolete? Nevada law forbids camels from setting foot on its state highways. This rule sounds like a joke, a prohibition designed for a problem that does not exist. Yet its origins are rooted in a strange and forgotten chapter of American history, the United States Army Camel Corps. In the mid-19th century, the vast, arid deserts of the Southwest posed a monumental challenge for the military. Horses and mules struggled in the brutal heat with limited water. An ambitious Secretary of War proposed a radical solution: import camels. The Army shipped dozens of the animals from the Middle East, creating a small experimental base in Texas. These camels were remarkably effective, able to carry immense loads across terrain that would break a mule. They were used to survey wagon routes and carry supplies to remote Army outposts. Some of these expeditions even passed through the Nevada territory. The experiment, however, was ultimately doomed. The camels frightened horses and mules, their strange scent causing stampedes. The soldiers assigned to handle them found them stubborn and difficult to manage. With the outbreak of the Civil War, the Camel Corps was largely abandoned. The animals sold off to circuses, miners, or simply turned loose into the desert. For years afterward, feral camels were a sporadic sight in the Southwest, startling prospectors and travelers. The Nevada law likely originated during this period, a pragmatic response to the genuine, if temporary, presence of these exotic beasts on the territory's trails, which would later become paved highways. This statute is a perfect example of a legal fossil, a rule created for a specific historical circumstance that has long since vanished. It makes us wonder how many other laws still technically in force were written for a world that no longer exists, governing problems and creatures that have faded into memory. New York State draws a hard line at the squirrel in your backyard, making it illegal to keep one as a pet without a special license from the Department of Environmental Conservation. This is not about disliking the bushy-tailed creatures. The law exists because native squirrels, like the common gray and fox squirrels, are classified as protected wildlife. That legal designation is crucial. It means the state views them not as potential companions, but as vital components of a healthy, functioning ecosystem. Imagine the consequences if every person who found a seemingly orphaned baby squirrel decided to raise it in a cage. The individual animal might be cared for, but on a larger scale, this would systematically strip the local environment of a keystone species. Squirrels are nature's foresters. They bury thousands of nuts and seeds each year, many of which they forget, leading to the growth of new trees and the spread of forests. Removing them from that role disrupts a natural cycle that has been in place for millennia. Furthermore, a squirrel raised in captivity loses its innate fear of humans and its ability to forage for itself. If that pet squirrel is later released or escapes, it is essentially a death sentence. It will approach people for food, often with aggressive results, or it will simply starve because it never learned the necessary survival skills. The strict licensing process acts as a powerful filter. It ensures that only individuals with a legitimate educational or rehabilitation purpose who understand the complex dietary and behavioral needs of a wild rodent are permitted to have one. This law forces us to confront a difficult truth. Our desire to care for a cute wild animal is often in direct conflict with what is truly best for the animal itself and the environment it belongs to. Does our affection for a creature give us the right to remove it from its natural world? Tennessee law draws a very specific line in the water, making it a crime to catch a fish with a lasso. This is not a metaphor or a joke. The statute explicitly outlaws the act of roping a fish as if it were a steer, a method that stands in stark contrast to every conventional form of fishing. Angling with a rod and reel relies on deception, tempting a fish with bait. Netting aims for volume, scooping up many fish at once. But lassoing is a feat of pure, audacious precision, a cowboy tactic applied to an aquatic environment. So what bizarre series of events could have possibly prompted lawmakers to formally address this? The most plausible theory points to a bygone era of rural entertainment and drunken dares. Imagine a group of friends on a riverbank a century ago, perhaps after a long day of work and a few too many drinks. One of them, showing off his roping skills, spots a large catfish or gar cruising lazily near the surface. The challenge is issued. Could he loop his rope around the fish and haul it in? The spectacle would have been hilarious, a chaotic struggle between man and fish that was more about bragging rights than putting food on the table. But lawmakers saw beyond the laughter. A lassoed fish is almost always foul-hooked, meaning the rope snags its body rather than its mouth, causing unnecessary injury and suffering. Furthermore, the practice is wildly inefficient and could easily lead to the wanton waste of game fish, pulled from the water only to be injured and discarded. This law is a quiet nod to the principles of sportsmanship and humane treatment, even for creatures we intend to eat. It forces us to ask why we have rules for how we hunt and fish in the first place. Are they merely about conservation, or do they also speak to a deeper, almost ethical contract between the hunter and the hunted, a demand for a certain level of respect in the act of taking a life? Natchez, Mississippi, has declared one particular form of animal indulgence strictly off-limits, explicitly forbidding any elephant from drinking beer. This is not a general guideline for responsible pachyderm ownership, but a precise city ordinance targeting a very specific scenario. To understand why a city would need such a rule, we must step back into the era when grand traveling circuses were the pinnacle of American entertainment. These shows would roll into towns like Natchez, promising unparalleled wonders, and their star attractions were often the massive, intelligent elephants. As a publicity stunt or simply as a crude bit of crowd-pleasing comedy, trainers would sometimes allow an elephant to guzzle down a bucket of beer. The image of a tipsy titan staggering around was good for a laugh, but the reality was far darker. An inebriated elephant is not a clown, it is a several-ton liability. Alcohol affects these giants just as it does humans, impairing their coordination and lowering their inhibitions, but with exponentially more dangerous consequences. A startled or disoriented elephant could easily trample equipment, break free from its restraints, or cause a deadly panic in a crowded tent. The Natchez law was a pragmatic, if strangely worded, response to this very real public safety threat. It represents a small, early step in a long journey toward recognizing that performing animals are not unfeeling automatons, but complex creatures whose welfare and natural behaviors cannot be safely overridden for a moment of cheap spectacle. This bizarre statute forces us to ask what other seemingly humorous antics in our own entertainment might one day be seen as reckless and cruel. Wisconsin draws a very cold line against an unlikely pet, making it illegal to own a penguin. The immediate question is obvious, since penguins are native to the southern hemisphere. What specific problem could this possibly solve in the American Midwest? The answer lies not in punishing aspiring polar enthusiasts, but in a three-pronged defense of common sense, animal welfare, and ecological safety. First, consider the sheer impossibility of recreating a penguin's natural habitat in a suburban Wisconsin home. These are not animals built for basements or backyard ponds. They require a highly controlled climate hovering near freezing, access to salt water for swimming and hunting, and a diet of specific fresh fish that would be a logistical nightmare to provide daily. A penguin kept in a warm living room would suffer immensely, developing fungal infections on its feet and becoming chronically stressed, a slow and cruel demise for a creature built for the Antarctic wind. Second, this law is a firm extension of the state's wildlife protection ethos. Even though penguins are not local, the statute treats them as protected exotic wildlife, recognizing that their specialized needs place them firmly outside the realm of responsible private ownership. It is a preemptive strike against the exotic pet trade, which often plucks animals from their native habitats or breeds them in captivity for a life they are utterly unsuited for. Finally, there is a hidden ecological risk. Should a pet penguin escape or be released, it could introduce foreign diseases or parasites into local water systems, potentially devastating populations of native birds like loons or ducks. This law forces us to confront a difficult but essential truth. Our fascination with an animal does not grant us the right to own it, especially when our care would inevitably fall catastrophically short of what it truly needs to thrive. Des Moines, Iowa has made a clear legal distinction between a pet in your home and a public health risk, explicitly banning pet rats from roaming freely outside their cages. This law might seem like an overreaction at first, especially to devoted rat owners who know their intelligent, clean companions are nothing like their wild cousins. But the city's concern is not with the well-behaved rodent in a secure habitat. It is with the impossible task a police officer would face trying to tell the difference. A loose pet rat scrambling through an alley looks identical to a wild rat emerging from a sewer. That single, panicked animal could trigger a cascade of public alarm, sparking fears of infestation and disease that the city would then be obligated to investigate at great cost. The law exists to prevent that exact confusion. Wild rats are notorious vectors for illnesses like leptospirosis and salmonella, and they can cause significant property damage by chewing through wires and walls. By legally requiring pet rats to be contained, Des Moines effectively creates a bright line. Any rat found at large is presumed to be a wild pest, subject to control measures, while any rat safely in a cage is recognized as a pet. This statute forces us to confront a deep-seated cultural stigma. For centuries, rats have been symbols of filth and plague, making the idea of keeping one as a pet seem bizarre or even revolting to many. Yet this law, in its own strange way, actually legitimizes rat ownership. It acknowledges that people do keep them as pets, and it provides a clear, responsible framework for doing so without endangering the community. It asks a simple but profound question: how do our ancient fears shape the modern laws that govern our most unconventional animal friendships? Palo Alto, California, has officially declared that a llama does not belong on its manicured suburban streets. A city ordinance makes it a clear violation to allow one of these tall, woolly creatures to run at large. This is not a law designed for a rural farming community, but for a densely populated tech hub where the sight of a loose camelid would cause more than just a double take. The statute likely emerged as a direct response to a growing 20th century trend: the rise of exotic livestock kept as novelty pets in residential neighborhoods. Imagine the chaos of a spooked llama bolting down a street lined with parked cars and pristine lawns. Its gangly legs could easily tangle in garden hoses or low-hanging power lines, while its powerful neck could smash through a bay window with a single panicked swing. The law is a preemptive strike against such suburban pandemonium, drawing a firm legal boundary between a traditional household pet and an animal that fundamentally belongs on a farm. This reflects a broader, ongoing tension across the country as more people seek unique animal companions, from pot-bellied pigs to miniature goats. The legal system constantly struggles to catch up, forced to define where a personal hobby ends and a public nuisance begins. When does your right to own an unusual pet infringe upon your neighbor's right to a safe and predictable environment? The Palo Alto llama law provides a very clear, if oddly specific, answer. Connecticut has taken the unusual step of elevating a common insect to a protected legal status, making it a crime to kill a praying mantis. This law singles out the mantis from all other insects for special safeguarding, a distinction that seems puzzling until you understand its vital role in the local ecosystem. Gardeners and farmers have long recognized the praying mantis as a formidable natural predator, a silent guardian that spends its days hunting down pests that would otherwise devour crops and ornamental plants. A single mantis can consume hundreds of destructive insects like aphids, caterpillars, and beetles over its lifespan, providing a free and highly effective form of pest control without the need for harmful chemical pesticides. The state's rationale is deeply ecological, an acknowledgement that this one species delivers an outsized benefit to both agriculture and backyard gardens. But this legal protection forces a broader question: why protect one bug and not another? The answer lies in the mantis's unique vulnerability. Unlike many insects that reproduce in massive numbers, the praying mantis has a relatively low reproductive rate and is not a particularly widespread or abundant species in the region. It is also highly visible and slow-moving, making it an easy target for children or adults who might see it as a strange curiosity to be squashed. By making it illegal to kill one, the law injects a moment of pause, forcing people to recognize its value before acting. This statute represents a fascinating frontier in wildlife law, where the legal system attempts to codify the intricate balance of nature itself, protecting not just the majestic bear or the soaring eagle, but the small, deliberate hunter that keeps our tomato plants safe. Florida's lush wetlands and backyard ponds are home to a symphony of croaks and ribbits, but taking one of those choristers home is a matter of serious legal paperwork. The state strictly regulates the ownership of its native frogs, requiring a specific permit for anyone wishing to keep one as a pet. This is not a simple form you fill out online. It is a formal application process designed to make you stop and think. The goal is not to punish frog enthusiasts, but to protect the delicate balance of the state's unique ecosystems. Each native species, from the tiny green tree frog to the larger pig frog, plays a specific role in its environment, acting as both predator and prey. If every person who enjoyed the sound of frogs in their local canal decided to take a few home for their terrarium, the cumulative effect could be devastating. Local populations could be depleted, disrupting food chains and leaving other species, like wading birds and snakes, without a critical food source. The permit process acts as a filter, separating the casual collector from the truly dedicated individual who understands the specific dietary, habitat, and health needs of a wild amphibian. It forces a simple but profound question: is your desire to own a piece of Florida's wild legacy worth potentially removing a vital link from its natural home? These regulations represent a modern understanding of conservation, where protecting a species means safeguarding not just the animal itself, but the intricate web of life it supports. The impulse to give a child a brightly colored chick might seem like a gesture of pure delight, but the law in many states sees it as an act of cruelty. Across the country, statutes explicitly ban the sale of ducklings or bunnies that have been dyed in artificial colors. This prohibition strikes directly at a tradition that once flourished around Easter, where baby animals were transformed into living, pastel-colored novelties. The history of this practice is a dark one, rooted in treating living creatures as disposable decorations. Vendors would dip chicks and rabbits into vats of dye, or sometimes even inject the dye directly into incubating eggs, resulting in birds that hatched already colored. Beyond the immediate physical harm of toxic dyes irritating their sensitive skin and eyes, the psychological impact on these animals is profound. A dyed chick is separated from its natural camouflage, making it a target for predators and disrupting the social bonds within its flock. The animal becomes a spectacle, an object of curiosity rather than a living being with its own needs and instincts, and the impact extends to the children themselves. The gift of a rainbow bunny often leads to tragedy when the novelty wears off and the difficult reality of caring for a fragile, rapidly growing animal sets in. These dyed pets are frequently abandoned in parks or left at overcrowded shelters once the Easter celebration ends, teaching a heartbreaking lesson about disposability. The law intervenes to protect both the animal and the child, preventing a moment of wonder from turning into a lesson in neglect. It forces us to ask a difficult question: why do we feel the need to alter the natural beauty of a creature to make it more appealing? And what does that say about our relationship with the living world we are supposed to cherish? Minnesota demands a permanent physical alteration before a skunk can share your home. To legally keep one of these striped creatures as a pet, state law requires a veterinarian to surgically remove its scent glands. This is not a minor procedure. It is an invasive operation that eliminates the skunk's primary defense mechanism, the ability to spray that infamous eye-watering musk. The ethical debate surrounding this mandate is fierce. On one side, animal welfare advocates argue that dissenting is a cruel mutilation, stripping a wild animal of its natural protection and causing chronic pain or health complications if not performed perfectly. They contend that a skunk without its spray is a fundamentally compromised animal, living in a state of constant vulnerability it can never understand. On the other side, public health officials and many lawmakers stand firm. Their position is that the greater good outweighs the individual animal's loss. An intact pet skunk, startled by a loud noise or a visiting child, could unleash an odor so potent it would require a homeowner to replace carpets, furniture, and even drywall. More seriously, that spray can cause temporary blindness and severe respiratory distress, turning a domestic mishap into a medical emergency. The state's insistence on this surgery is a brutal, pragmatic calculation. It transforms the skunk from a walking public nuisance and potential health hazard into a manageable, if unnatural, household pet. This law forces a deeply uncomfortable question. Is our desire to keep an exotic companion justified by surgically removing the very thing that makes it what it is? Those oversized ears and tiny faces have made the fennec fox an internet sensation, a desert sprite that seems to promise a unique and adorable pet. But in several states, owning one of these captivating creatures is a privilege strictly controlled by law, requiring a hard-to-obtain permit. The fennec's skyrocketing popularity on social media has created a surge in demand, yet these are not domesticated animals like dogs or cats. They are wild canids with deeply ingrained instincts. Their permit requirements are a direct response to the immense challenges of meeting their needs in a captive environment. A fennec fox is built for the harsh Sahara, with those enormous ears radiating heat and large kidneys that allow them to go long periods without water. Replicating that arid, spacious environment in a suburban home is nearly impossible. They are also naturally nocturnal and incredibly energetic, needing to dig and run for hours each night, behaviors that can quickly destroy a living room and disrupt a household's sleep. Beyond welfare, the permit process addresses two other critical state concerns. First is the risk of zoonotic diseases, illnesses that can jump from animals to humans. While any pet can carry germs, exotic animals like fennec foxes can harbor pathogens that our medical community is less familiar with, posing a unique public health challenge. Second, and perhaps more alarming, is the threat of them becoming an invasive species. While a fennec would struggle to survive a cold winter in warmer southern states, a single escaped or released pet could potentially establish a feral population. These efficient hunters could then devastate local populations of small mammals, birds, and reptiles, disrupting an ecosystem that never evolved to handle such a predator. The permit acts as a crucial filter, ensuring that only those with the expertise, resources, and proper enclosures can provide a safe home, protecting the fox, the public, and the local environment from a well-intentioned but potentially disastrous mistake. Angels Camp, California, holds a deep and famous connection to a single celebrated story, Mark Twain's The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. That literary legacy is kept alive every year with the town's Frog Jumping Jubilee, a vibrant festival where frogs compete for glory. Yet right there, in the heart of this hopping tradition, a law exists that seems to defy its very purpose. It is illegal to use a live frog in a frog jumping contest. This is not a contradiction born from confusion, but a deliberate and modern update to a classic event, a legal compromise between cherished history and evolving standards of animal welfare. The original contests, much like the one in Twain's tale, were informal and often rough on the amphibians. Frogs might be overhandled, jostled by crowds, or even subjected to questionable methods to make them jump farther. The modern law redefines the entire premise of the competition. Today's Jubilee does not force a wild frog to perform. Instead, participants are provided with a designated, professionally cared-for frog for their single jump. The animal is handled gently by its trained keeper. It makes its leap and is then returned to a calm, secure habitat. This transforms the event from a potential free-for-all into a controlled demonstration where the frog's role is brief and its well-being is the primary concern. This legal shift reflects a broader cultural conversation happening in towns across the country. How do we honor our past without being trapped by its practices? The law in Angels Camp offers a quiet answer, proving that tradition does not have to be static. It can adapt, ensuring that the celebration of a jumping frog does not come at the cost of the frog itself. Massachusetts law holds a peculiar relic from its most infamous chapter, a statute that forbids keeping a squirrel as a familiar. This is not a modern animal control regulation. It is a legal ghost, a direct echo from the paranoid winter of 1692 in Salem Village. In that tense Puritan society, a familiar was not a pet. It was believed to be a demonic spirit or a low-ranking devil that took an animal's form. A cat, a bird, or even a common gray squirrel could be seen as a witch's servant, a conduit for dark magic sent to torment the pious. The mere accusation that a woman kept such a creature could be entered as evidence against her in court, a damning detail used to confirm a pact with Satan. Imagine the terror of a neighbor spotting a squirrel lingering near a reclusive woman's home, that simple sight twisted into proof of diabolical collaboration. This law was a weapon of mass hysteria, codifying superstition into a tool for persecution. Centuries have passed, yet the legal framework born from that fear remains technically active. It raises a haunting question about the laws that surround us all. How many other statutes drafted in moments of long-forgotten panic or prejudice still linger in the legal code, waiting for a moment to be rediscovered? These ancient rules are more than just curiosities. They are fragile threads connecting us to the fears of our ancestors, reminding us that the law can sometimes be the last thing to let go of a ghost. Riverside, California, has officially defined a very specific form of canine mischief. The city code makes it a violation for an owner to allow their dog to molest a vehicle. In this legal context, molest does not carry its modern, heavier meaning. It is an older use of the word, signifying to pester, annoy, or interfere with. So what does a car-molesting dog actually do? Picture a determined terrier relentlessly scratching at the paint on a parked sedan. Imagine a large, muddy-pawed retriever enthusiastically jumping against a driver's side door, leaving a trail of grime and drool down the window. Perhaps it is a persistent hound that will not stop barking at its own reflection in the shiny hubcaps. These are the acts of vehicular molestation the law seeks to prevent. This seemingly comical statute is actually a hyper-specific example of a universal legal principle that holds pet owners responsible for any damage their animals cause. In nearly every town, a dog that chews through a garden hose, digs up a prized rose bush, or scratches the finish off a car door creates a civil liability for its owner. The owner can be sued for the cost of repairs, and in many cases they can also face a separate fine from the city for violating a public nuisance ordinance. The Riverside Law simply takes this broad concept and narrows it with surgical precision, naming the exact behavior and the exact target. It removes any ambiguity. An owner cannot claim they did not know their dog's enthusiastic greeting constituted a legal problem. This ordinance forces a simple but profound question about ownership and accountability. If your companion causes a few $100s worth of damage to a neighbor's property, where does your responsibility for their actions truly begin and end? Ohio draws a legal cage around exotic pet ownership with its Dangerous Wild Animal Act, a law born from one of the most tragic and terrifying nights in the state's history. In October of 2011, the quiet town of Zanesville became the scene of a waking nightmare. A man who had collected a private menagerie of exotic animals released 56 of his creatures before taking his own life. Lions, tigers, bears, and wolves suddenly roamed the countryside in the fading evening light. Sheriff's deputies, armed with rifles and faced with an impossible public safety crisis, were forced to shoot nearly all of the animals to prevent them from reaching nearby homes and highways. The Zanesville massacre was a stark, bloody lesson in the catastrophic risks of unregulated private ownership of powerful predators. In direct response, the Ohio legislature passed the Dangerous Wild Animal Act, a comprehensive law that named the forbidden species with chilling clarity. You could no longer legally keep big cats like lions, tigers, and jaguars. Bears, hyenas, Komodo dragons, and all non-human primates from chimpanzees to macaques were added to the list. The law did offer a difficult compromise for existing owners through a grandfathering clause. Those who already possessed these animals were given a grace period to register them with the state, but they had to meet a daunting set of new standards. They were required to obtain a permit, carry substantial liability insurance, and provide veterinary records and proof of microchipping for each animal. Most significantly, they had to build enclosures that met strict caging specifications designed to prevent any possibility of escape. This was not a simple registration. It was a costly and complex process that forced many longtime owners to make a painful choice, invest thousands of dollars in upgrades, or surrender their animals to accredited sanctuaries. The impact on private exotic animal ownership in Ohio was immediate and profound. The law did not just stop new people from acquiring these creatures, it systematically reduced the existing population over time through natural attrition, as grandfathered animals passed away and could not be replaced. This legal shift forces us to confront a difficult ethical question. Where does an individual's freedom to own a remarkable animal end, and a community's right to be safe from a preventable disaster begin? The law in Ohio provides a sobering answer, written in the memory of 56 lives lost on a dark October night. Alaska takes this principle to its logical extreme, where it is flatly illegal to keep a moose as a pet. This is not a suggestion, but a firm legal barrier between human domesticity and one of the North's most formidable wild creatures. The dangers are not merely theoretical. An adult moose can stand over 7 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh more than 1,500 pounds. They are not aggressive by nature, but they are profoundly territorial and easily startled. A moose kept in a backyard would see a fence not as a boundary but as a challenge, casually stepping over or through it to reach a more interesting patch of willow. Once loose, that same moose might perceive a dog, a child, or a parked car as a threat, leading to a charge that can easily flip a vehicle or prove fatal to a person. This specific law is just one piece of a much broader legal framework designed to protect both residents and the wildlife itself. Alaska heavily regulates all interactions with its iconic animals, from strict rules about feeding bears to prohibitions against approaching marine mammals. The state's position is clear. These are not potential pets or attractions. They are sovereign beings of a wild landscape. The moose pet ban forces a simple but profound question. Why do we feel the need to possess and tame the very wildness that makes a creature magnificent in the first place? This law suggests that some animals are meant to be observed from a respectful distance, their grandeur belonging to the mountains and forests, not to a leash in a suburban garage. Hawaii draws a firm line to protect a creature woven into its very cultural soul, making it illegal to sell turtle shells. This is not a simple environmental regulation, it is a defense of a living symbol. In Hawaiian tradition, sea turtles or hanu are considered sacred ancestral guardians or omakua. They represent wisdom, good luck, and a deep, enduring connection to the ocean. To see a hanu resting on the beach or gliding through the waves is to witness a piece of living history, a revered elder. This profound cultural respect makes the act of poaching a turtle for its shell not just a crime, but a profound desecration. The black market for these beautiful patterned shells is the primary driver behind this illegal hunting. Poachers target nesting females on remote beaches, taking both the animal and her unlaid eggs, devastating local populations that are already struggling to survive. Hawaii's state law is powerfully reinforced by the Federal Endangered Species Act, which lists all sea turtles found in U.S. waters as either threatened or endangered. This dual layer of protection means that even attempting to ship a single turtle shell from Hawaii to the mainland could result in massive federal fines and potential prison time. The law forces a difficult but necessary question. How do we place a monetary value on a living legend? The hanu's worth is not in the decorative pattern of its carapace, but in its ancient, quiet presence in the turquoise waters, a presence that these intertwined laws strive to ensure will continue for generations to come. That final goldfish swirling in a tiny plastic bag represents a tradition now outlawed across many states and cities. The practice of giving away live animals as carnival prizes is increasingly seen not as innocent fun, but as a profound act of irresponsibility. The core problem is one of impulse and unpreparedness. A child wins a fish in a moment of excitement, a prize earned from tossing a ring or shooting a water gun. There was no prior intention to care for a living creature, no research done on its needs, and often no proper equipment waiting at home. That goldfish is frequently dropped into a small, unfiltered bowl, a death sentence for an animal that can grow to the size of a grapefruit and produce significant waste. Though welfare concerns are immediate and severe, these fish suffer from ammonia burns, oxygen deprivation, and stunted growth in an environment completely alien to their needs. The shift in public perception has been gradual but decisive. For generations, fish were viewed as the ultimate disposable pet, a short-lived decoration for a child's bedroom. Today, a growing understanding of animal sentience challenges that notion. We now recognize that fish feel stress and pain, and that their complex behaviors are signs of intelligence, not automatons. The laws banning them as prizes are a direct result of this ethical awakening. They force us to confront a difficult question about our own past behaviors. Why did we ever think it was acceptable to treat a living creature as a trivial reward, equivalent to a stuffed toy or a piece of candy? These statutes mark a cultural turning point, a collective decision that the fleeting thrill of a game should never come at the cost of an animal's well-being. And so we reach the final statute on our journey, a rule that protects a creature of the night from ever becoming a living decoration. Across most of the United States, it is illegal to keep a native bat as a pet. This is not a law born from fear of their silent, fluttering flight, but from a deep and urgent understanding of their indispensable role in our world. Bats are the unseen architects of healthy ecosystems. Each night they embark on a mission of pest control, consuming thousands of mosquitoes, moths, and agricultural insects. A single colony can protect entire fields from ruin, saving farmers millions and reducing our reliance on chemical pesticides. Other species are vital pollinators, their long tongues uniquely designed to sip nectar from night-blooming flowers, ensuring the survival of plants like the agave from which we get tequila. To remove a bat from this vital work is to pull a single, crucial thread from the fabric of the environment. The legal prohibition is also a direct and sobering public health measure. Bats are a primary rabies vector species, meaning they are one of the animals most frequently found carrying the deadly virus. This is not a mark against their character, but a simple biological fact. A bat kept as a pet is a profound danger not only to its owner but to everyone in that household. Their teeth are so small and sharp that a bite might not even be felt, especially during handling, allowing the virus to be transmitted without any warning sign. This is why the law carves out one very narrow exception for licensed wildlife rehabilitators. These trained specialists are the only individuals legally permitted to temporarily house a bat, and they do so under a mountain of stringent conditions. They must have up-to-date rabies vaccinations, use thick leather gloves designed to withstand needle-sharp teeth, and maintain meticulously clean and secure enclosures to prevent any possibility of escape or cross-contamination. Every interaction is a calculated risk undertaken only for the purpose of healing and release. This final law on our list forces a powerful reflection. It asks us to see beyond superstition and appreciate the silent, essential labor happening just outside our windows after dark. It reminds us that some of the most vital members of our community have wings, and that our greatest respect for them is to let them remain exactly where they belong, wild and free in the starlit sky. From the deserts of Arizona to the icy waters of Alaska, these 33 laws paint a portrait of America in all its strange and wonderful contradiction. They are more than just legal oddities, they are a patchwork of history stitched together from forgotten public safety panics, long-lost cultural traditions, and our ever-evolving relationship with the animal kingdom. Each statute, no matter how bizarre, began as a solution to a real or perceived problem, a snapshot of a society trying to impose order on the beautiful chaos of life. Some were born from genuine danger, like the Zanesville tragedy that rewrote Ohio's exotic pet laws. Others emerged from the simple, daily friction of community living, like the neighborly war over a howling dog in Little Rock. And a few seemed to be pure legislative folklore, rules crafted for a world of circus stunts and desert camel trains that vanished a century ago. Together, they remind us that the law is not some sterile, perfect document, but a living, breathing record of our collective fears, our values, and occasionally our utter bewilderment. So we have to ask, what is the most bizarre animal law still on the books in your own hometown? Share your own local legal fossil in the comments below, and let's keep this wonderfully strange conversation going. These bizarre statutes raise an obvious question: why do they still exist? The journey to erase a law from the legal books is often far more difficult than the original act of passing it. Legislatures are consumed with contemporary crises, from budget shortfalls to public health emergencies, leaving little time or political will to debate the merits of a donkey bathtub ban. There is simply no glory for a politician in championing the repeal of a forgotten statute. This legislative inertia is compounded by a legal principle known as desuetude, a doctrine suggesting that a law which has gone unenforced for a very long time should be considered void. Yet American courts have been historically reluctant to fully embrace this concept, meaning a law can technically remain active for centuries, a sleeping dragon in the legal code, even if everyone has forgotten why it was written. Despite these hurdles, citizen-led movements have successfully lobbied for change. In one notable case, Wisconsin officially repealed its ancient ban on margarine, a law originally passed to protect the state's dairy industry. Similar grassroots efforts have targeted outdated animal laws, arguing that their presence clutters the legal system and can occasionally lead to bizarre, if rare, enforcement. The process for repeal is methodical. A concerned citizen or group must first research the exact statute, then lobby a sympathetic state representative or senator to sponsor a repeal bill. That bill must then pass through the same arduous committee process as any new law, facing votes and potential amendments before finally reaching the governor's desk for a signature. This democratic scrubbing of the legal code, while painstaking, is a vital civic exercise. It forces a community to look at its own reflection in the law and decide, is this who we still are?